Dracotail Phyrexial from Doom of Dimension is way better than people think. Being a light spellcaster allows us to splash Branded Fusion in our Dracotail deck, without having to play a bunch of Branded bricks to make it worthwhile. This new support is sick, let's talk about it. Starting with the main deck, I have 3 copies of 5 mana. One thing that I really like about Dracotail in this current format is that the K9 might not be played as much thanks to Yummy being the most prevalent deck. If everyone plays Yummy and they just sequence their combo turn 1 in such a way where they don't activate Izuna, cause they don't have to special summon Marshmallow from the hand unless they get hand trapped. As such, people might forgo playing Izuna in their main deck, or even a K9 deck in general. And if they do, our 5 mana is completely unhindered, as them throwing a hand trap on your Arthalion is not the end of the world, as you still get to get your fusion plays going. It's only really a problem if they can summon Izuna and then threaten a Zeus play on their following turn, thus clearing your entire setup. And obviously against the Yummy deck, resolving a 5 mana is really strong, cause they kinda struggle if you go 5 mana fusion 2 Dracotails away, make Arthalion and start clearing their field, as well as setting incredible follow-up for the next turn, as the Yummy deck can't readily deal with your Ketu, Rahu and incredible follow-up that 5 mana can grant you. And for this reason, I think Dracotail is very good in this current format, and is in a great position to be a top contender, post Doom of Dimensions. Moving on, I have 3 copies of Dracotail Lucius. Again, nothing really changes here, it just makes sense to play 3 of all of your good cards. This card is good to draw as it's a starter, as you can normal summon it to grab 5 mana, or a missing piece to fuse with. And even if not, you can just fuse away with Lucius, as it's just another Dracotail name. Additionally, having Lucius in rotation makes your new card from Doom of Dimensions that much better, but we'll talk about that soon. Then I have 3 copies of Dracotail Mululu. Fusing with Mululu is key for when we go second, as we can on resolution of its effect negate one of their cards, which can be really annoying to deal with when you just first action, play a fusion spell, fuse away this into Arthalion. And even if they were to change something to your spell, to try and dodge your interruption as you would be turn player, so your Mululu would go on chain before their card, you still get to force out a whole lot of interruption. There's usually something left that you can just negate with the Mululu indefinitely, which makes it kind of like a pseudo board breaker in a sense. Then for the one-offs, I have 1 Urgula, 1 Pan, and 1 Phyrexial. Pan and Urgula are pretty self-explanatory, we've seen those before, but Dracotail Phyrexial is the new card from Doom of Dimensions. There are certain combos with this where you can summon it back with Secretarion Dragon, use its effect to reborn another Dracotail, or perhaps add your 5 mana to your hand by summoning it and then bouncing it back with Phyrexial's effect. This gives your endboard a bit more power, along with the new trap from Doom of Dimensions. Phyrexial being a light spellcaster is also very relevant, which you will learn about shortly. Then I have 3 copies of Rahu Dracotail, and 3 copies of Ketu Dracotail. These spells are absolutely incredible. There is some diminishing returns to where if you open with these and you start with them, your subsequent Dracotail effects will just be worse, as you can't set more extenders in Rahu and Ketu. However, they're still quite flexible cards and gives you a lot of options when you go second. And thus, even though if you have to set a trap which you can't immediately activate, and you can usually use them on the opponent's turn, and that's pretty fine too. Then I have 1 Flame and 1 Sting. It is very unfortunate Sting is not a super, so it doesn't match the other traps. However, the card is really good and thus warrants a spot in the main deck, at least at the moment. I chose not to main deck Horn, as drawing 1 is pretty bad and drawing 2 is pretty horrendous, especially when you go second. Additionally, most people and most decks are able to play around Horn at this point. Whilst you can use Horn at a pretty good rate when you go first, by bouncing back their normal summon, their link play, or kind of force them into not putting anything in attack so they can't attack over your monsters, is not too bad. As such, I side this card for when I go first, but it's not a card I wanted in the main deck for the aforementioned reasons. Both the Sting and Flame are way better when you go second into a board, as your opponent's more likely to interact with spell cards or with their graveyard, rather than monsters having to be in attack position. Additionally, having the Sting in your deck makes it so that when you go first against Lunalight, you have a more real way to actually deal with their threat of Liger Dancer, as you can just take away the Leo that they sent with Chick, or Perfume to deny them Tiger access. But that is it for the Dracotail engine. It would be really nice to get a spell like Ketu or Rahu that we can activate, to just have 1 more spell in rotation, but for now, that's all we got. Then I have a branded engine of Fallen of Albas, 1 Cartesia, and 2 copies of Branded Fusion. Thanks to Phyrexial, we can now use Branded Fusion to send Albas from our deck to the grave, along with the Phyrexial to summon either Albions. With Shrouded Dragon, we can get additional interruption or follow-up in the form of Phyrexial. Or with the Branded Dragon, we can access Mirror Jade, which is another powerful interruption for when we go first. I'm not playing a huge branded package because I don't need these cards for the grind game. If I can activate just 1 Branded Fusion a game, I don't need to activate the second one. As such, I don't need to play multiple Fallen of Albas, I don't need to play Despias in my deck, or other ways to get to Branded Fusion. If I just draw this card, I think it's pretty good. Additionally, if you draw the Albas, you could just fuse into this, as long as you're not using the effect of Mululu or Rahu, as they can only summon Dracotails. You could warrant playing more Cartesius, but I've never felt the need to play additional consistency cards in this deck. I think it's pretty consistent as is, as it's basically the full Dracotail lineup, and 2 Branded Fusion, which is a 1 card combo, and 1 Cartesia, which works with any of your Dracotails. If the format gets grindier, I could see something like multiple Cartesias, along with maybe Frost and Talent in the main deck, and a lesser emphasis on the hand trap route, but for right now I think this is a great way to play Dracotail. But should something like the Mirror Match pick up in popularity, you could make those changes. And then for the non-engine, I have just hand traps. It's 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 copies of Effect Veiler, 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbits, 2 Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion, 3 copies of Nibiru the Primal Being, and 3 copies of Mulcharmi Fuvalos. I think hand traps is the safest way to go. These cards are good when you go first or when you go second. And recycling Bell and Ashes is actually really good, as they're very powerful cards when you have access to them every single turn against both Yummy and Dracotail. But that's it for the main deck. It is 40 cards. For the extra deck, I have 1 copy of Spirit with Eyes of Blue, 1 copy of Cross Sheep, 1 Hieratic Seal, 1 SP, 1 Typhon, 1 Gulamel, 1 Philia Regis, 1 Secretarion Dragon, 3 copies of Arphalion, 1 Mysterion, 1 Albion the Branded Dragon, 1 Mirjade the Iceblade Dragon, and 1 Albion the Shrouded Dragon. That's it for the extra deck. And for the side deck, I have 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. I expect there to be some amount of Lunalight, White Forest as they got a reprint in the 2025 Megatins, as well as Sky Strikers, all of which Droll is really good against. I don't want Droll against Yummy or Dracotail, thus it's not in my main deck. But against these combo-centric decks, or just decks that search a lot like Sky Strikers, Droll can be really good. 3 copies of Mulcharmi Meowls. With the banning of Moon, I expect there to be less Fiendsmith decks, and thus Meowls does get a bit worse. However, it's still pretty nice into Yummy, Lunalight, and some other rogue decks as well. 3 copies of Kishtira Fenrir. I think this card's a must for when you go first. It's just really good to summon Fenrir, search a Fenrir, so you have a card to fuse away with. And if they summon Retaliating Sea, you can banish it with Fenrir, so you dealt with it on turn 1. Additionally, Fenrir deals very nicely with Isuna, as they go Isuna effect in hand to summon, you then Fenrir on Isuna. So sure, they can send down Lupius and summon Lupius and make a Typhon. But at that point, that's all they're doing. And you still have a Fenrir that can eat away at their resources on the following turn. Then I have 3 copies of Fantastical Dragon Phantasme. With Vanquish Soul Canine likely exiting the metagame, the Phantasme does get a bit worse. However, something like this is still incredible against Sky Strikers when you send them first, as it allows you to negate cards like Widow Anchor, and just dig deeper into your deck and see your engine cards to break through what they have. The 1 copy of Horn that I mentioned that's in my side deck, again, I put this card in pretty much every time I go first. It just helps a lot when you have 3 traps. As they draw a card and put a card back from the grave, you can Ash or Bell them to negate them. As such, a common play, at least before Doom of Dimension, was that you let your opponent activate the first Dracotail trap, if you wanted to enter into a grind game, as then you could just Ash or Bell the second one, and thus, unless they play 2 of 1, which no one did, you shut off their entire grind game. Additionally, when you have 3 traps, it's also just 1 more interruption and 1 more draw for you. As such, your turn 1 combo is just that much better. Coupling that with the Phyrexial and our Branded engine gives your deck a lot more power when we go first. As such, we are less likely to just get blown out by our opponent's combo deck, which was a major issue with Dracotail before Doom of Dimensions. And for the last 2-sided cards, I have 2 copies of Dimensional Barrier. Just 2D Barrier, I wanted a third card to put in when I go first. So with the 1 Horn and the 2D Barrier, I have 3 of them, as I want to take out most charming Fuvalos when I go first. Additionally, I also want to put in Fenrir, and when I put in Fenrir, I would have 6 cards. There's usually some hand trap that is not ideal in any given matchup. For example, the mirror match, where Nibiru the Primal Being is just completely dead. So it helps to just have a couple more cards to put in when you go first to take out these dead cards. But that's it for the deck profile. What do you guys think about Branded Dracotail in this current format? Do you think the branded cards add a lot to this deck that they didn't have before? Or do you think the pure variant with even more hand traps is the way to go? Let me know in the comments. But thank you for watching, and have a good rest of your day. If you enjoy my content, make sure to also subscribe to my second channel, linked in the description box down below. There I'll be posting more personalized and exclusive content.